Okay, hello and welcome, guys. We're on a live stream right now, and I am joined by a very special guest, someone who's actually really recent in terms of joining this community, like analysing the different perspectives of the dating market. So I'm joined today by UBERSOY. So do you want to give a short introduction about yourself?
Yeah, thank you for having me and agreeing to this discussion. I'm basically right-wing content creator. In the recent times, as you've mentioned, I've been interesting, like in the dating market. But I don't know when my next video about this topic is going to go, but I do want to comment quite a few things about the modern dating relationships. And the way I look at it is mostly from evolutionary perspective. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds good. I think you can reason a lot from evolution in terms of like current dating trends, because like these are like the underlying forces that push people to the behaviors that like are choosing to that are making them choose like the partners that they want to like date and who they are attracted to. If I could get my
Mhm.
words out correctly. Um, and you recently made a couple of videos about your perspective on the black pill. Like, would you like to
Yes.
just so
Yeah, I
if
can.
anyone's not watched those two videos, would you like to give a short like summary of what each of those two videos were summarizing?
Yes, sure. In both videos, I come from the position that the black pill highly over exaggerates, the amount of what importance looks play for women. Also, I don't think that they, they seem to think that women's and men's sexual, I guess, preferences and for picking partners are very similar, and that women's I come from a position that we should apply evolutionary psychology into that, and also another theory, sexual selection. I think that those are the most determining things. So in the first video I have well explained exactly where I'm coming from, and all this stuff. I did mention that for example, women's sexual evaluation, I guess, of men is very environmental. It is depending on like things such as status, it like perception, extended phenotype, and etc etc etc. So like those things that I don't think that incels or the black pill, is it the same, by the way, or
I think well, I usually try to avoid the word that you just
mhm.
used anyway because of the like YouTube algorithms that like it. So
I'll try to use black pill then,
yeah, that's a
right?
better way of
Okay.
phrasing it. But the
Yes. So,
sub
mhm.
like fives, like that's what I usually refer to them as a
Yeah,
safer sort of
and
word.
we'll get to it.
Mm.
Yeah. Yes. I actually watched your video about the looks thing, and I do agree with your point that you did a well critique of this like 1 to 10, I guess, metric system.
Mm.
But sorry, not metrics, merit, or how to say, I
The
don't know.
scale, the
So
1 to 10 look
yeah,
scale. Yeah.
yes, the scale system.
Mm.
That's right.
Yeah, so I just want to
Yeah,
bring up a couple of points there for your
okay.
first one. So your first criticism of the black pill community, it sounded like that you think that they play an over exaggeration on the importance of looks. I just want to like respond to that quickly by saying
Mm-hmm.
I actually somewhat agree with that. Uh, I think that it is exaggerated a little bit, but that's not necessarily like what we are believing in. A lot of the time, that is just people pointing jokes or like exactly what it says on the tin, exaggerating about this particular topic. But I think when we look at the actual science and data, sorry, um, then like we have a more realistic perspective and we're trying to like quantify the exact importance that looks have. But when you read the comment sections and of my videos or some other black pill YouTubers videos, then you will likely see the comments like either raging or poking jokes, like saying, "Oh, looks is everything. Like this is unbelievable." It's or like something along the
That's
lines,
what I
yeah,
see.
or something along the
Yeah.
lines of, "Oh, it's 6 foot or over," or if you're below that equals death, or balding equals death, or something along those lines. That is an
Mhm.
exaggeration, but when we look at the actual data, then we are trying to quantify it more accurately.
Yeah, so I guess if you want to go into data straight away, we could go into it. Here's my like
Hmm.
fundamentally, I'll just say where I'm coming from. I think that looks, I don't know if you will agree with me, but the whole thing about physical attraction, uh, from the studies and the literature that I've seen, and it's basically a consensus in the evolutionary psychology, is that looks, physical looks for women, they are dependent on external factors, such may be the phenotypic, sorry, the extended phenotype. And what is the extended phenotype? Is the like an extended like ornament. For example, a person may do art and or a person may like do private lessons and piano, and actually studies show that those people almost have three times as many sexual partners if they're male than I guess
What
the
if they have
average
these
thing.
like common interests or
No,
something
no,
like
no.
that? Or
Well, no, it's
you
not
mentioned
common.
art
Well,
or playing piano. Like, is that what you're saying?
no, the specialization of the person. So, for example, if a person is a piano instructor, this his talent and the fact that he knows how to play piano is de facto an extended phenotype, and also
Would it sound just quickly?
mhm.
Would it sound realistic that if you take some guy and you make a Tinder profile about him, and currently his bio says like I sit at home playing video games, like I'm quite big on food. I like testing different foods, and I sometimes go fishing. If you change that bio to the more interesting passions and hobbies that you enlisted,
Yeah.
such as playing piano, being a master of the arts, like would that like realistically lead to improvements in his online dating results? Like I just don't really see
Well, I
that as
mean,
realistic.
I would assume it will be little online dating report
Hmm.
improvements because I think we both agree that when it comes to online dating, it's mostly a phenomenon of short dating. The way like
Um, Hold on a
women
second.
peaks,
Like before
yeah,
you
okay,
that like that was a. I'm just going to interrupt. I do apologize, but like I do want to
hmm
just provide some data that I do think that is relevant at this point,
okay,
because like you did say that like online dating is mostly for short periods of time. I'll just share my screen with you quickly so you can see what I'm seeing as well. So there was this survey done. They asked people what they found the most important when looking when using online dating as a medium, and they actually found that 49% of people were using it as a means of finding a romantic partner, while other things such as hookups only accounted for 23%.
yes, but the thing about it is that those are like they're saying what they wish to do, but it's not really what they happen to do anyways, right? So, like, if you look at surveys, usually people who meet on those sorts of dating apps, they have a short length of a relationship.
Wait, so just
So,
going back to the first point that
mhm.
you raised 2 points there, but I just want to cover the first one quickly. So this chart, I'm sure you've seen it before, also states
Yes, I
that.
have. Yeah.
Yeah, so what's your thoughts on this? Because, like
Well,
obviously the trajectory shows that there is a growing number of people that are actually forming relationships online, not just, like using it for hookups, because
yes,
that is what
yeah,
the
yeah.
general perspective is. So what's
Yes,
your thoughts on this?
I'll have a very good rebuttal against that. By the way, I did do it in my own video.
Hmm.
So this chart is taken from a survey, I believe, from Stanford Universities that dates to 2017 or 19, something like that. This thing, Met Online, they take into account, well, I mean, usually when people think of it, Met Online, they think of, oh, like some sort of a dating app or something like that. In
Yeah.
reality, they just measure like Facebook, Twitter, Discord, like where they like start speaking. That's why, all the other options they're worded in such a way as to exclude those possibilities. But in my video, there are actually I did link two surveys.
Mm.
So one survey says that about less than 10%, I believe it was 8% of people have they formed their romantic relationship on dating sites. Of course, for ages 20 and around 20. By the way, when it comes to ages like 18, it actually goes down. So like the maximum it's like around 25, and it's more than like about 20% but less than 25%, right? And there's also another survey, I believe it was by YouGov, and it was less than 15%
I think I
that
have the
marry
study right
think.
here.
Okay.
The YouGov
Eh,
one. Like I do actually have this.
okay. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So yeah, this is the one that you're talking about,
Yes.
and I believe the first study
Yes.
that you just
Okay.
mentioned was this one
Oh
about
yeah.
having lower
Yes.
percentages for online
Yes, so
dating.
you have those
Yeah, I have
studies.
these studies,
Hmm.
and like this is why I have them here today, because
Okay.
obviously like this does look like conflicting evidence. Obviously this chart is showing that online is becoming more prevalent. Meanwhile, this study and the other one that you provided in your video tries to show
Well,
that online dating is less relevant. But like I want to
sorry,
just okay, go on.
it's not really conflicting data that much, because this Met Online, as I mentioned, it includes things like Facebook
Yeah,
and
no,
the
but
other one,
on the
special
surface
controls.
level, yeah, but I was just saying on the surface level that it looks like conflicting data, doesn't it?
Well, sure, sure, but I mean, as I said, if you look deeper, it doesn't really.
Yeah, like so that's what I'm going to try to
If
achieve
we're
now.
talking about breakdown,
Yeah,
okay,
so I actually like read through all three of these studies, in fact, to find out
okay,
like the methodologies of how they were conducted, and
hmm,
yeah, on the surface, like this study, which was a survey, it had 550 participants. Like they asked people how they met their spouse and partner, and this is the problem with I have with this study. Firstly, there's a few different things wrong, and this goes for this study as well. Um, Purely based on sample size, firstly, this one has 550 participants, and this one had over, I think it was nearly
2000,
3,000. Yeah, it was
yeah,
2,900. So
hmm,
based on that alone, like this has a larger sample size, therefore it is slightly more reliable. And second point, and this is the more important one, this one had a single option that you could select, and same goes with this study, the YouGov poll. That had a single
yes,
option
yeah,
of what you could select. Meanwhile, the
yes,
study on the left hand side, the way
has
this was
multiple.
the way that this study was conducted, and I think this was more effective as well because people. The participants who filled out the survey, they were provided with a paragraph section to fill, and they had to explain in detail the way that they form their relationship with their partner. So, and I think the way they conducted this study was actually genius because, the way people fill out surveys, like YouGov, the company that conducted this survey, like the way they collect their surveys is they pay people like small quantities of money to fill out their surveys, and that just doesn't sound really like reliable because you know how people are, like they're just going to tick any old box. They're not really going to be focusing on actually filling it out honestly or reliably. Like they're just gonna be more focused about getting through to the end and then like picking up the cash, picking up the paycheck. Meanwhile, this study, like you could not actually move on to the next section until you adequately filled out the full in detail like method of how you and your partner formed the relationship. So like I'm not sure of what the
Yes,
threshold was, but
well,
like let's say it was
uh,
50 words. So if you just typed online, then it wouldn't accept that. You have to type more in detail.
yes, yes. So like as I mentioned, this study doesn't, the first study does not really go against what I have to say, because we both know that even our like interactions on like with our friends, they're not just like IRL, they're also online, right? So you'd expect people who have maybe seen each other in real life to talk a lot of like on Facebook or on Telegram, right? Or WhatsApp. So
Mm.
this doesn't really conflict with anything that I've mentioned.
Yeah.
What,
Yeah, so
the
like the way I
problem,
see it, okay, go on. you're just gonna wait
Yeah,
one more
yeah.
point.
So just the problem that I have with this study, not with the study actually, but the people who interpret it, is that when they see it, they like a lot of people, they think of Tinder and all those dating apps where males' chances are, well, we both know exactly what they are, right? Instead of thinking that this is the place where they're starting their relationship. Um, yes, so that's my rebuttal.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. So like here's an example. I think this is quite accurate. So let's say if two people, a man and a woman, the first time they ever meet each other is on like some summer camp that they did when they was 15 years old, and then 5 years later they see each other on Tinder or Instagram, and they see him in like the quick ad section, and then they'd be like, oh hey, I remember him. I remember I went to that camp with him that one time, and then they add each other or they match with each other from there, and then
Yeah.
after that they
Mhm.
agree to meet in a bar. They for their first date they go into a bar. So that's like 3 pieces of information there, and this study, the first one, takes all 3 of them into account. So I believe the way that this study was like they analyzed the data was they used machine learning algorithms to read through each of the participants paragraphs, and then see, like, it would read the data and say, oh, so Tinder, like,
Yes.
and then it would say,
Yeah.
oh, met for a bar. So
Well,
then it would calibrate
I
that into the
mean,
results, if you know what I'm saying.
if you have a specific thing on Tinder, I'd like to see, because what I've seen so far is that Tinder is not very popular. I do have some statistics right now. If you want, I could
Yeah.
link it to you
Well,
on.
we're just finishing up on this study. Like, I was just going to make the point. We'll get to your statistics in a second.
Okay.
However, like, I believe there are both limitations to this study and the one that you brought up. So you correctly said that when it says met online, it doesn't actually say what online medium was used. So you don't know if they just use Facebook, like, to message each other from time to time, and then that is factored into the results, or if they genuinely are, like, matching up on Tinder for the first time and then forming a relationship. So maybe, like, if they were to do this study again, then, like, they would need to break up these results further into, like, just how like online, like, what type of online, like, was used to form the relationship. But I still feel that this study is more accurate as a whole, because this study and the other one that you mentioned in your video, it takes one selection of many and factors that and treats that as the only factor that led to the relationship forming. So if we go back to the example I provided earlier, like, if we, like, if a person first met in summer camp and then they matched on Tinder and then they went to a bar, like, what are they going to fill out in the
Yeah.
survey? They can't tick all 3 boxes. And this is where virtue signaling also comes into play, because if a person has a choice of either filling out the survey, I met on Tinder, or I met in a bar, I think they're more likely to tick the box I met in a bar, because people don't want to be associated with dating apps. They think that it's a
Well,
bit low.
yeah, I don't think that, like, I think you're overestimating the amount of dishonesty. Also, considering a lot of people on Tinder are males, over 60%. I did find another random stat. So according to survey gathered from What's Goodly poll of about 10,000 current college students from 2015 to 2017, the people who are using Tinder, like, why, right? So 4% and a half said looking for a relationship. I could send you the
Okay, so this is conflicting the study that I raised earlier.
it does, yeah.
Hmm.
Well, I mean,
Well,
this
that
is
was it taken
YouGov,
from a
and it's not
college,
about
wasn't it?
real. No, well, I'm talking about Tinder. This study is not Tinder, so it doesn't really conflict. I mean,
Hmm.
it is about
It
dating
says dating
stuff,
apps
but
slash websites, but
okay,
you're taking,
yeah.
so you're using interpolation right now. So you're
I'm
taking
talking about
Tinder.
specifically Tinder.
Yeah, and
Yes.
Tinder, like, although it is the world's largest dating app, like, it probably only accounts for around 20% of the actual dating app pool, it's not
Well,
factoring in all of the other dating
so
apps. Like this has a
Tinder
larger base.
has, yeah, little under 60 million of active users. I believe the second one is it OkCupid or like Bamboo, and they have like less than 30 million, and then
Yeah,
it
but when you
doesn't,
add up all of those combined, you're probably looking at numbers over 200 million.
Well, I don't think it's over 200 million. I think it's less.
No,
I
but
mean,
either
unless we're
way,
talking.
like
Okay.
this has a larger base compared to the study that you're using, and I think everyone knows that Tinder is more of a hookup app as compared with other more established dating apps such as Bumble. Like they're more respected,
Hmm.
and therefore, like this is where you may see the discrepancy in the data, where more people are looking for a romantic partner
Okay,
on all of the dating apps.
yes, but a lot of the data for like male and female differences in attraction are taken from Tinder and OkCupid, right?
Mm.
So if you want to make an argument that maybe what did you say, Bumble, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so then I would probably say that I guess, importance of looks, and considering that it's not really short-term dating, it would decrease. So that's my prediction. If you have anything on Bumble, I'd like to see it.
Mm.
Um,
Well, I was only
mhm.
like bringing up Bumble as an example,
Okay.
but I was just highlighting that the study that you
Yes.
raised there, it only looked at one dating app, where I think that this is a more accurate study as it
Okay.
includes data from all dating apps. That's the only point I was
Y-
making.
yeah, sure. It does look like most people are interested in long-term partnerships, but also, my point I brought up from before, who like the people who end up the relationships that end up working out after those dating apps, they last like 3 times less than normal
Hmm.
relationships. But again, I don't have the data right now on me.
Yeah. Okay.
Can we
That does
like
sound interesting, and I wouldn't
mhm.
expect that to be inaccurate either,
Yes.
because you probably would expect a relationship to last longer in if it was formed in real life as compared with dating apps.
Yes,
Hmm.
I mean, usually the people who form their relationships is, I mean, as you say in your community, the chads, right? And they're the one that like making the most out of it, and it's
Hmm.
not in their interests to keep a long and meaningful relationship.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
so,
fair enough. Before we move on to the next
mhm.
thing, because I think we've spoken a lot about this, I just wanted to.
Yes,
I don't
yeah.
think I explained one of the points well. Um,
Mhm.
the only thing I was going to say about these two conflicting studies was that as a whole, I believe the first study is more relevant and accurate because it takes into account all factors that go into forming the relationship. So when the people are filling out this survey, they have to type in all of the factors
Okay.
that amounted to the relationship forming. Whether that, like, so if they first met in a church and then they
Yes, yes,
then
yes.
they met
I
in a bar,
understand.
and they also messaged like
And then
on
they
Tinder.
talk
Yeah,
now.
yeah. So
Yeah.
like I think this factors in
I mean,
everything. Meanwhile, this study doesn't.
I think like you're very overestimating how many people are using Tinder. But here's I think we could finish on a good note. Like my main objection, again, I'll just repeat with the study. It's not like I disagree with its. Well, I mean, I do disagree a little bit with its methodology, but the way you explained it now, it does make more sense. But here's my biggest contention with it is that on Tinder and those dating apps, if you're male, usually, I mean, if you're a female too, but to a lesser extent, you're going to be prejudged based on your looks, right?
Yeah.
But if you met like in real life, and then you start talking in Facebook, where like I'm sure most of them are talking about, not on Tinder or any other dating apps, you're not going to be like prejudged on this criteria. They already would know how you look like. So
Or
that's
maybe
my
it
contention.
provides a easier window of opportunity to message in on online as compared with in real life. As like maybe people are too shy to approach
Yes, yeah,
uh
yeah,
in
that's
real
another
life,
thing.
but you know, like
Yes, that's true.
when we are seeing like the implementation of these online dating apps, then like it provides an easier advantage for people to like, you know, open those doors of opportunity.
Okay.
Mm. Before we move to the next point, the only thing that I was going to note, another thing that was interesting in this study, like a piece of data, that if you take a look at this green line here, it says have never had a partner, and this is data. This is data for 18 to
Yes.
24-year-olds. Note in 2019, so this first data point is 2019. It's roughly at 36 or 37%, and in the last 2 years, it's gone up to 43%. So in the space
Yes.
of 2 years, it's gone up by about 6 percentage points, and I think that kind of shows the implementation that the coronavirus outbreak has had on the dating market.
Um, I'll have to one second. Okay, yes. Sorry, I don't have very good quality to look at, but yeah, seems to be accurate.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on to the next thing, like you had a large portion of both of your videos were on the topic of age and how that related to
Yes.
like your advantages or
Yes.
disadvantages in dating.
Yeah. So do you want me to like make a quick argument?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, like include
Okay.
whatever studies or like
Yes.
evidence or personal anecdotes
Yes.
you have
Yes.
to provide
Yes.
as well.
Yeah. So for I guess my main point, I'll have to include a study. So there will be probably a lot of surprises in your comment section, but the studies show, and I'm linking it right now. So you can look at it, screen share. I think if you like looking at graphs, um, you can look at that. There are a couple of graphs
Okay. So
in
do you want to
the
share it right
yeah.
now? I'll stop sharing
Well,
my
I
screen and
mean,
then
oh God. Oh, well, I mean, I could share it.
yeah,
Yeah.
now
I
share
thought
your
you would
screen.
share it. Yes. God. One second. Okay.
Yep,
Um,
I'm having a look at your screen now.
yeah. So, um, hold on. Well, I mean, I'll get into it, right? I'll get into
Okay.
it. First, I'll explain the argument. So the argument is as follows. Women, and if you look at across of evolutionary, like in almost all evolutionary literature, you would see that women are maximizing status over physical attraction, and partially it's because of patriarchal selection. Women are interested in finding a male who would provide for her and who would be dominant. And usually social status is correlated with perceived dominance. And that seems to be exactly indicate the case. And people who are in their 40s and 50s, they have typically already achieved something. And that's why you would see that their I guess attractiveness value peaks at around those ages, and you've got different cities. It's taken from a couple of cities, and women's, as men prioritize fertility, right? Women's sexual value peaks at around, well, actually before 20, but let's go at 20. It's at its maximum, and then at around 30, it reaches an equilibrium with men, and then it just goes, and it's
Down
basically,
and down from there.
yeah. So yeah, and basically that would be my argument. And well, yeah. So what are you going to respond to?
Yeah, so I was just going to ask, so the audience knows as well, like, do you know the methodology of how this data was collected? So, like, how did they calculate these desirability ranks?
Yes, they have calculated it based upon one second. Uh,
If you don't
I
have it,
think matches.
if you don't have it to
They
hand,
did.
because I did read through the study, like, I do know, like, how they calculated.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
Okay.
so they again, like, they used sort of like algorithms and to calculate these figures, and the main like piece of data that went into calculating these scores was the response rates based on a man sending out a message to a woman,
and women receiving it,
yeah.
and
So
so replying.
and a woman replying to it, and they found that older men typically sent out less messages because there is like a smaller dating pool. Like there's very few older guys using like these dating apps, and because of that, that's also reflected in the women. So if you're an old guy using a dating app and in a town, like there's probably only going to be roughly about 30 to 50 other women also using that dating app. So like you're going to send out maybe 10 messages, and because there's not many guys to choose from as well, like the woman's going to have more attention to reply to each of those ones. But when there are thousands and thousands of younger people using these dating apps, like if a woman's getting hundreds and hundreds of messages sent out, and each man is also sending out hundreds and hundreds of messages because there are just so many options, then the response rate is automatically going to be a lot less. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yes, but this study is just like a part of the puzzle. If you look at raw data from like any given country, so typically there is an age gap, and women, they usually marry. I think the average. I don't know what's the average age in America. I think it's 4 years difference from women and men. Is that right? Like I don't know.
I don't know the
On
exact
top of
data
my
on that, but yeah, I'm guessing it would be
yeah,
like a few years older.
it's something like that. And women, they usually, when they're young, they like men who are older. And then as they age, they seem to find sexually attractive men who are at around same age as they are. And it's actually, you did reference it on OkCupid study. It does seem to confirm that. While male, they mostly look for younger people, right? And I think my point stand here, that you can see that women who are older, they don't typically receive any messages unless they might.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I firmly
Yeah,
believe that
okay.
women like
Mhm.
have a decrease in attractiveness as they
And
age.
also,
But I
yes,
don't think that's reflected in
according.
the data for men, because
Mhm.
men who are in their 40s and like low 40s, high 40s are going to be messaging women who are older, who are also going to be of lower attractiveness as well. So therefore, they're going to have higher reply rates. So I
Well,
don't
they
think
would
this data.
usually
I don't think this.
message people who are younger, from what I've seen. Also, what was it?
Hmm.
Do you have like
I'll go
any
to another piece of
study?
data. Yeah, like I do have a
Mhm.
few.
Okay. So should I turn off
Yeah,
the
turn off the
screen
screen
share?
share and I'll be able to.
Okay. Um, can you? Oh, okay. There you go.
Okay.
I'm a bit boomer with the
Yeah.
technology.
No problem. So the first piece of evidence that I have. So you mentioned like older men, are usually going to be desiring younger women, and they're going to be messaging these younger women as well. Well, that's just simply not possible, because if we have a look at the data on this chart, this takes the
Yeah, you
median.
have to. I can see it. You'll have to turn it on.
Oh, I need to expand it. Are you saying?
Yes. Well, I can't
Can
see
you see
the
it?
screen share. No, I can't see.
Oh, I'm not sharing the screen. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, yeah.
There you go. Okay, so now you can see it as well.
Hmm.
Yeah. So this chart takes a look at based on a woman's age, what her average age settings are going to be. So on the way that these dating apps work is that you can filter out guys, or women for that matter, based on their age. So let's say like if a woman is 20 years old, she's going to select men who she's only going to want messages from guys who are 18 to 26. So for the guys who are in their 40s or 30s, they're not even going to like register on these young women's radar, because
Yeah. Hmm.
they're not even in the settings, the age range settings for these young girls who, like you've said, are the
Yes.
most desirable.
Yeah, I mean, I could explain it from different, I guess, perspectives. But do you happen to know where this is taken from?
I believe it's from OkCupid. I'm not 100%
Okay,
sure on that,
well,
but
yes. Okay, so I'm assuming that it would prioritize short-term dating, and I would not be surprised. But when it comes to real life, the oldest allowable match, it will be higher. So that's what I will say
oh, so
because it that,
are you going against your argument of online dating now? Because the first study
what?
from the article you brought up, like that was based on online dating. Are you rejecting that now and saying that a older
No,
man with
well,
a younger
first
woman
of
is more
all,
realistic in real life?
it's not taken from OkCupid, as far as I know, and
I believe the study
I
you raised was
believe
OkCupid as well. I think they're both
really,
OkCupid. Yeah, most of these studies come
uh,
from either OkCupid or Tinder.
no, it does not seem to be coming from OkCupid. I just so I think my comes from I'll have to look where it is coming from, but if it were to come from OkCupid, I think that it would not reach the results that it had reached, right? It would probably reflect something that you see on your screen.
Hmm.
And,
No, so
as I
this is my
said, like,
point. Like,
it's the central problem. You seem to extrapolate a lot of studies from, information, a lot from apps like Tinder and OkCupid.
hmm. Yeah, like I was
So, yeah.
okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, I was just gonna like explain my point further. So if we have a look at this chart for like a of why we saw the high desirability ranks for men who are older on the data that you provided. If we take a look at women in their 40s, they are predominantly having their age settings for men who are also in their like mid 40s. So pretty much most people are like age matching more or less, and therefore since the women are lower attractiveness at higher ages, they're going to be more likely to respond to the people that are messaging them who are also the guys in their 40s.
Well, okay, this is the preferences of women. If you look at preferences for men, they are at around 20, like years 20. And I would assume that the matches between men and women are somewhere in the middle, probably skewed towards females' favor because they decide what's happening. But like again, this is I don't believe you can extrapolate that into real life um,
Mm.
that
Well,
much.
so you're saying that in real life, then status is more relevant.
Well, okay, look, here's what thought I got like a few days ago. I was thinking about it more again. I would probably say that I've looked at more data as well. Is that there are those so-called sub fives. Let's just assume that the look scale, like top, like one, it then amounts to like bottom 10% males in attractiveness, right? Like
Mm.
eight is bottom 80%, nine is bottom 19%, and
It doesn't work
etc. So,
exactly
so, so
like
it's,
that.
yeah, it doesn't
Yeah,
work. I know it
it's
doesn't
more
work.
like a bell
But
curve.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah, it is. And here's the thing. I'll just tell you, your looks matter the most probably when you are one, two, three, and then the bell curve shifts, and then your looks matter the most when you're like 8, 9, and 10. So that's like what I have intuitively sensed from like again looking at all these data and etc. But and there's other, I guess, variables you could play with your looks, because like another critique I have with it is that it seems like males, well, I mean, the black pillars, usually they are males and they project male sexuality, and they think that physical attractiveness is going to be purely physical attractiveness and not like other factors influencing the perception of physical attractiveness. And I think that like if you look at people like Casey Neistat, or I don't know how to pronounce him, or Elon Musk, they are considered to be like sex symbols actually. I could link you a few things about that. You would be surprised, but I think that's because they are high in status.
Hmm.
Sorry, I went for too long. Do you have anything to say
Yeah, yeah.
against?
So this is like a
Mhm.
major issue that I had with the two videos that you released, because I understand what you're trying to say, that status can supposedly increase your attractiveness, but I think you like unintentionally contradicted that point in your second video, because in your second video you provided lots of data correlating that all of these things, such as status, intelligence, and wealth, are all
Uh-huh.
very closely linked to your
Yes,
attractiveness as well. So,
yes.
so how do you know
Mhm.
that it's like not this third
Yes.
variable of attractiveness, which is allowing people to reach higher pay positions, like
Mhm.
because they're being trumped by the halo effect, like, or it even starts as young as school, like these more attractive students, like in
Do
secondary
better in
school and
life
college, yeah,
socioeconomically.
are going to
Yes. I did talk about
receive
it.
are
I
going
know.
to receive more resources from the class teacher, and therefore they're going to be more intelligent and get and have an easier time getting ahead.
Yes, so that's true. And also babies look at people who are more attractive, but also those who are higher in status. But I'll
Hmm.
just put that aside. I'll explain. Well, first of all, explain why I brought it up. I brought it up to debunk the like beta, sorry, alpha. I mean, I don't know if you're going to censor it or not, but you know what I'm
Yeah,
talking
yeah, I know
about.
what you're
And then
talking about.
yeah,
Just
beta
alpha
bucks.
seed beta
Yeah,
need.
yeah, exactly. So,
Hmm.
because this and I'll explain this concept actually came from the red pill, and then it was like became black pill stuff. It seems to be like an intuitive dating strategy that is some sort of an abstraction that it seems like males have projected into females by watching a lot of gold digging videos. And I think it does exist on some level. But when we're talking about means and averages, what you often see is that looks, as I mentioned, and now I'm going to answer your question. Looks, status, and money, they go together very well. There is only one exception. So when you're very ugly, you tend to be more intelligent and make more money. So that's the only one exception. But the rest, it goes very linear. And
Hmm.
here's my explanation why it is the case. Those who are more like smart and intelligent, they also have, well, they basically they have good genes, right? And those genes, they influence their attractiveness and their uh, other factors, and they tend to correlate pretty well with each other. And my main message of my last video was that basically if you're good in intelligence, unless you're very ugly, or like you're somewhat like you're not disgusting, or you have a social status, it is very likely that your attractiveness or other factors would go with it as well. I think you might make a point right now and say that, how do you know that it's not attractiveness that influences it, right? Maybe it's all based around attractiveness. Well, if you look at it's basically there are certain biological, well, here's what I would say: they are mutually influencing each other, but there are also certain biological, sorry, physiological phenomena such as 2,4-D ratio that influences you very high, almost as it is as important as height in some cases, and you can't really see it. The 2D, or is it 4-2D ratio? I don't know. Do you follow it? It's a difference in the in your fingers in
No, I'm not
males that
aware of
correlate.
how
Oh, okay.
fingers length is correlated with
Yeah, so
any.
so so it's correlated highly with testosterone, and it is also correlated with like certain social outcomes, right? And people, they don't typically see that, but it's like another physiological thing that influences, other stuff. And typically, people who, let's say, have poor genes in one area, they'll also have typically poor genes in all other areas, unless, as I mentioned, they're very ugly. So I think I ran for too long, but those
Yeah.
basically are my point.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so like this is my main issue because like pretty much what you said there is like correlation doesn't equal causation. Like just because somebody has longer fingers or whatever, like that doesn't necessarily mean that they're gonna like that is the factor that is causing them to have higher testosterone or like be more attractive or something along those lines. And the same thing
Well,
goes with your original
mhm.
argument that you made in the first video, was that even if status is like the main determinant of your attractiveness as a man, the fact that it's related to looks, like very closely related to looks, how do you know that it's not just the looks doing the talking and that is allowing these men
Yes.
to pull away in
So
the dating market and dominate? How do you know that it's not looks? How can you say that it is really the status doing it?
yes. So you could probably isolate looks or intelligence and look at it in on individual levels, and then you would not have the correlation. But then, you would say that, oh, well, how do you know it's not just, sorry, oh, yeah. So I'm sorry. So that's what you will do. Uh,
Well, I think
does it
if we
make
take a look
sense?
at
Hmm.
observable reality for a second and see how
Hmm.
the data lines up, if we take a look at supposedly low status, very attractive guys, so they go against the grain, like they're not, that closely correlated. So these are going to be your like McDonald's worker chads, or just your minimum wage chads, like just your normal everyday chad. They aren't struggling in dating in the slightest. They are still getting like loads of matches on Tinder. Like they still have loads of options. They're not struggling
Yes.
at all. However, when you look at the flip side, high status men who are unattractive, Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, like these are the richest men on the planet, and they run the world's largest companies. They ended up getting divorced with their wives, and they actually created the two richest women in the world because of that.
Yes. Well, I mean, in those cases, I think that was a like gold digging phenomena. If
No,
she
but if
was
they're high
interested,
status, if no, but if you're saying that these men are high status, then surely
they
like
are.
these women would be attracted to them based on that alone, irrespective of their looks.
Well, it all, well, I mean, at this point, I don't think looks like go into anything. Like if we're talking about people who let's say are over three out of 10, if we say like one corresponds to bottom like 10 percentile, right, and go on and on. So my point would be, as long as like you're not disgusting and you're high status, your look wouldn't matter. Sorry, what was your objection? It
Yeah,
went
yeah.
out of my
No,
head.
I
Hmm.
understand your point. Like, I think there is some truth to what you're saying. That if you're so like far down in the look scale, then no amount of status is really going to make any difference. But once you're like past a certain threshold, I usually say it's about 5. Like then, if you're a high status 6, then that's going to put you in a lot better position than a low status 6. Like you're going to have an edge in the market that other people don't.
Well,
Like there is truth to that, but like if you're a high status 2 competing against a low status 7 or an 8, then like the equation's not really going to line up. Like obviously the good looking person's going to win every time.
yes. So, yeah, like right now there are a lot of abstractions. So, like, if you could prove any of that with data, it does make sense from a logical
Mm.
standpoint. But what I end up seeing is that people of similar parameters tend to marry with each other. I wouldn't also say it's not like just with looks. I did quote Elizabeth McClintock, and she conducted a few studies, and the conclusion seemed to be that people who are good in one dominance hierarchy are marrying those who are also good in that dominance hierarchy. When I say dominance hierarchy, it doesn't just mean social status. So, for example, if you are attractive and you could marry another attractive woman, that's your dominance hierarchy where you specialize. But people could go for intelligence, for example. Um, but right now would probably shift the domain of the discussion into slow life history strategists. I'll say this: women and men who prioritize uh, looks that are like outside of healthy, that they're not prioritizing health, instead they're prioritizing like sexiness or whatever. Those people, they are slow life history strategists, and both of them, they would seem to like their goal would be to maximize partners instead of finding like long-term relationships, which, for example, is what I'm concerned about. But maybe some people would not be. But um, let's also not forget that I had like sorry, I talked about something else.
Yeah. Okay. So are you happy to move on to
Mhm.
another point then? If we've finished talking about like the status,
Sorry.
looks,
Uh,
evaluation.
um, yeah. So
So what other points would
I'll
you like to
just
clarify in the video?
yeah, I'll just want to, you know, reiterate, or I don't know,
Reiterate.
my whole premise right here is that there seems to be certain factors that are influencing looks. They typically have to do with phenotypic extended phenotype, and they have to do with social status. And by those things, women are 1,000 more times more, how to say, they are more, I guess, influenced by those things than are males. So there is I did reference in my last video a cross-cultural studies. I believe it was from United States, Lithuania, China, and some other country, and they basically all found the same thing. So it does seems to influence it, but also what influences looks is your I guess, socio-cultural and phenotypical similarity to the person who you're interested. So you'd often find people of the same race engaging with each other, same socioeconomical class. I don't think that's done because of status. There are, those constructive, critical theories that usually they say it's because of status, but it's actually it's just you want to help your, similar phenotype to you. You want to help them out
Mm.
and reproduce with something that is similar to you. So that's another thing. And
Yeah.
and finally, what one last thing,
Okay.
just mentioned is that what once again, I would prefer to separate the findings on Tinder and the findings on like I guess real life experience, because in real life, although women would look at you and they would rate your physical attractiveness, you could still like prove them wrong, or you could, I guess, impress them somehow. But on dating, you don't really see that. And in real life, the like it's not 65 males and 35 females. Like it's about us half. So and you can have
It's not a
actually in real
half.
life. What?
I provided data in one of my recent
Yeah,
videos
yeah,
that
I
for
actually
young
know.
age groups, it's 105 men for
1.05.
for every 100 women.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know, but when you're 29, it's well, okay, whatever. I mean, it's very close. It also depends where you are. So, for example, I'm enrolled in like political science, and sometimes I'm taking psychology classes, and if I were to start a relationship or start hitting women there, it would be very like beneficial for me to do so, because there are about 80% women in most of my psychology lectures. But that aside, like it really depends on the environment. And in real life, as I mentioned, the final last thing before we move on is that most people are really looking for long-term data, sorry, long-term relationships. But yeah, okay,
Hmm.
you
Yeah,
can.
I was going to jump in at the point you talked about
Okay.
people prioritizing racial phenotypes when looking for long-term partners, and this actually came up in the most recent debate I had with Vegan Gains too. So he said that
Hmm.
this effect is actually exacerbated further in women's preferences as compared with men. So women are more likely to seek a partner who has the same phenotype as she does, rather than men. Men don't really care about a person's ethnicity as much. And what I think that this shows, like, although ethnicity isn't equal to looks, it's still a big part of looks and a big part of the black pill too. And it's something that you cannot change. It is a entirely genetic factor. So, um, by that definition,
Yes.
like if women are placing higher importance on ethnic phenotypes, then does that not imply that they care more about looks?
Um, I mean, if you want to overextend, what constitutes looks, because I
Well,
thought
I think
it's
ethnicity
just
is looks.
okay. Well, I mean, if you want to do that, then I guess by that logic, that would be part of looks. But you're right. You can't change it, but it's also hard for you really to change your intelligence and
Hmm.
your other things. You'd probably the the correlation of your adult IQ, it's about zero point 0.8 genetic. So
Yeah, see, this was
at least
this.
when it
In
comes.
fact, yeah, I thought about this earlier. Like, I was gonna raise this earlier in the discussion that, um, in 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 your most recent video, like you did speak about other factors such as intelligence as well, and how they could be correlated with your attractiveness. But even still, like things like IQ, they are very very concrete. Like they aren't really correlated um, with like your environment at all. Like it's mostly genetic, and the way that these tests are designed as well is they're supposed to be quite concrete. You're not really able to train and improve on your IQ result after you've taken the test. So my point is, even if intelligence is like does carry a big weight in your attractiveness, it still points back to genetics. And that is what the black
No,
pill is like
okay,
about. That's the foundation of the black pill.
okay.
It's
I
genetics,
mean,
genetics, genetics.
like if you want to say that, it doesn't seem like there are like any other stuff that I could say to contradict that, unless say, like if we highly change the environment, then I guess your IQ would be less genetic, maybe 1.6, but you know, uh, like it doesn't seem that I disagree with that. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. So like I think before we move on to the last part of the call, like I just want the last point I want to make on this is that what we've kind of established so far, well, as I've already established a lot of times on my channel, that your looks is mostly your genetics. So like your ethnicity is obviously your genetics, your
Hmm.
facial structure is your genetics, your height is your genetics, and then over the course of this discussion, we've also found out that like your status, a lot of your status is also tied to your
Hmm.
genetics. It's heavily tied to your looks. And on top of
Yeah.
that, intelligence is also tied to genetics. So it all points back to genetics. Like for the most part,
Hmm.
like obviously for a lot of these situations, you will have a small like environmental factor at play, but the
Yes.
majority of the time, genetics is playing over 50% role.
Yes, I don't disagree with any of those assertions.
Hmm. So are you like agreeing? Are you in agreement with the black pill's perspective of
Well,
genetic determinism? Because that is like the
I
foundation.
yes, well, I seem to agree with the the genetic determinism. As I mentioned, the things that I disagree with them is the, I guess, over importance of looks, and
Hmm.
like you'll have to watch my video. I don't have everything on my in my head right now, but there are quite a lot of things where I do disagree, and it's mostly, I guess, on the dating part. Well, solely on the dating part. I didn't really know that Well, I mean, frankly, I don't see the black pill extrapolating anywhere else before the dating things. Like, even if, you mentioned the comments that I got, and it's basically like looks, 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 right? Like, I mean, I
Yeah.
wish they could talk about the things that we just discussed, right? But you don't really see it, unfortunately.
Yeah, a lot of those are like just exaggerations. Like I wouldn't expect
Yeah.
much from a lot of YouTube
Mhm.
comments. Like how many of these people are actually going to read over the studies or data?
Yes, there were quite a few of comments from people who are black pilled. Even Coach Blackpill, he had commented on the channel, and they seem to agree with most of my points actually, and
Hmm.
they also denounced the people who one user called low IQ incels. Um, so I did receive some positive feedback, but
Yeah.
as I mentioned, mostly I guess I had a negative experience with the black pillars.
Yeah. I don't think yeah, I don't think people usually get positive responses if they dare question the black pill or any of its
Yeah.
followers. Um, I think now we've like talked a lot on the data sort of side of the equation. I
Hmm.
think now is probably a better time. You mentioned before we started the call about um, some solution sort of based talk,
Yeah.
like trying to provide some. So like what is your perspective on the dating market? Like what would your advice be to any man who is like struggling, like whether he's a sub 5 or like in that middle sort of range? Like would you give different pieces of
Yes.
advice for them?
Yes. So, well, first thing I'll say that, we'll probably see differently who is a sub five. I know you go with like your parameter that you have explained in your video about the scaling system. I go with like population measures. So like top, like scale one, it's top 10,
Yeah.
like, sorry,
So
bottom
so
10%.
if you're in like the bottom 20% of men,
Yes,
then
bottom
yeah. So
20%.
if you're in like the
Okay.
bottom 20%, so like you're really unattractive, then what should you do? What options do you have?
Yes, so it is likely, it's going to probably sound arrogant, but it's likely that you're also not very intelligent if you're like bottom 2%, unless you're like very ugly, and that's, extreme cases, and you could, I guess, specialize in some sort of different things like uh, intelligence or something else to gain social status.
So you would say like
Right
try to
now,
find social status, and would you say
yeah,
that would still work even if you're bottom twenty
no,
percent
okay.
attractiveness? Like, will
Listen,
getting social status
I
help?
know a lot of people would probably write in in the comments like beta bucks, bro, or whatever. I'll explain where I'm coming from. I'm actually, well, I'm a Darwinist. I'm doing a coming out right now. So here's the thing. Throughout history, about 50% of males had reproduced, and about 15% of female, oh, sorry, and about 85% of females had reproduced. We
Yeah.
had,
So only like the top
yeah,
alpha chads are, or like the top 50% of
well, yes,
yeah,
yes.
like are
Okay, so
reproducing.
we're both familiar with it. Good. So here's the thing. The selective pressures after the monogamous culture has been extolled, they have really kind of collapsed, and some males, they I guess social status for some time was their, I guess, top priority. They were not as much competitive, but you know right now we're, at least from the evidence that I've seen, we're experiencing a dysgenic decline. So we see people, for example, the highest fertility is with people who are very low in IQ, and the ones who are high in IQ, their fertility is small. You also have got a lot of other factors that contribute to this genics. So my point is that I don't frankly want a lot of people, let's say in the bottom 10% to reproduce, because if they do reproduce, they will carry a lot of those genes, and those people with those genes, they would have even more harder time with sexual success, and things are going to get worse. I think we will agree. I mean, I will agree with the black pill that the dating stuff like Tinder, although we disagree that I think they're not as important now. You probably think that they're important. I think that in 10 years they'll be important, and like way more important than now. So that's my
Okay, yeah,
position.
yeah. It's moving like slightly off topic. So if we just get back on the track, so like, what
Okay,
advice? Yeah,
yeah.
so like, in as short a space as possible,
Mhm.
what advice would you give to somebody who is in those lower echelons of attractiveness, like bottom 20%? Like,
Yeah.
what is the best path for them to take? Let's just assume that
Uh,
he's low attractiveness, low IQ, shorter
yeah.
height, like just
Yeah.
all of the good stuff.
I think they would probably they should stop thinking about finding women. So
But
and
what if
the
they want?
best
What if
thing,
they want? Wait, so you're saying to just call it quits and just
yes, if they want, they would suffer from mental health issues because they're not getting them unless they could, for example, be like Casey Neistat, or I don't know if I'm butchering his name, who's, well, he's objectively ugly, right? I mean,
yeah,
we
he's
agree.
unattractive. I've seen his
Yeah. Oh,
face.
yeah. Yeah. He is. So but like this guy is, if you just type on the internet, is Casey Neistat attractive, and a lot of women, they'll be like, no, at first, I found him very unattractive, but then when I started watching him, damn, he has some nice personality, I wish I was with him. But what she means by,
I think that's a lot
well,
of virtue signaling involved there.
well, I mean, frankly, I think a lot of women would prefer to be with this guy, because his status and his personality, and his confidence, it reflects how attractive he is perceived. So although he's, let's say he's a 2, right, or maybe a 3, right, at best, he's perceived probably as at least a 6, if we look at those stuff. But let's not get into it. I'll just
I think you're treading
um
very treading water at the
yeah.
moment on that
Yeah,
point.
we're shifting topics. Like
Yeah.
sometimes I'm
Okay,
going
so move on
off
to the
to.
next one then.
Mhm.
So for a person who's in like the middle sort of zone, so like they're getting like very little amounts of attention from women, but it's at least something. Like they're getting minimal amounts. Like so they want an improvement to their dating life. Like what options do they have? So for like the normie sort of range.
Yes. So I would probably say, and I think we're both normie. I would probably be like slightly higher than normie, but I'm not sure if I'm like a high tier normie. I don't know. But when normie, I've seen one of your videos. You did mention that you can like understand where you are in the status position, or sorry, in the attractiveness scale, by understanding how women interact with you, whether they're interested in you, right?
Hmm.
And you did mention, quote unquote, you have received like a Chad treatment at some point. So
Yeah, two
I do
times.
remember that. Yeah, and well, I mean, I guess I've received more than 2 times, and um, I'm not really sure what's the average in normies, but let's just assume you're only live 20 years old. So if you at least once you have received this treatment after you were like 14 and to 20, or even twice, you're probably are I guess above 3 at least.
Hmm.
And if that's the case, I think that there like your attractiveness, unless of course you go on Tinder and of course you're going to be insta rejected and you'll have mental health problems, but you are quote unquote breathable. Like there is some like a lot of hope for you, and especially if you specialize in a dominance hierarchy, you're going to say, oh, just better bugs, bro. But the studies that I've seen so far, they seem to really support the positive way out. So just to summarize, I think that if you're really ugly, maybe you can call me black-pilled, but it seems like um, there's not so much you can do unless you invest in your status heavily, like Casey Neistat, right?
Hmm.
But if you're like maybe even above 2.5, then um, of course, when you're like 3 or 4, it's going to be more difficult. But it's like after 5, I think that looks would not even be the most important thing about you, unless, as I mentioned, you are on Tinder.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, makes sense. So I think you're saying that um, if you're like bottom 20%, bottom 25%, then you should look at status maxing and try to reach like the top 1% of status, and then you might see some results
I
there.
mean, you should still status
Yeah.
max if
Yeah,
you're a
yeah, yeah.
normie,
I
but
think you
just,
said that was yeah.
yeah.
You said the same like solution for people in the normie range. I would have like a slightly different perspective compared to that.
Okay.
So I
Yeah.
think if you are in the like bottom like 20%, like you're objectively unattractive, then I think that you need to looks max first before you try any sort of like uh, social status maxing or anything else along those lines. Like so, and if that involves surgical options, then by all means like do that. So if you've got a really oversized and unsymmetrical nose, then I think looks maxing via surgery, getting a rhinoplasty will be the best investment possible in order to improve your looks and try to get yourself up to a 5. And then once you're a 5, then you can start focusing more on the like social status maxing and like all of the other like sort of things that are more like encompassing like the red pill sort of philosophy.
Hmm.
Hmm.
So I guess I'll have to respond. There are a couple of things I like about it and a couple of things I don't like about it. So what I like about it is that it would, enhance your, I guess, physical attractiveness, and basically it would allow you for more options. Um, but here's the problems. So at least the least problem with it, and I'm sure many of your community would disagree with it, is that by that precedent, you're basically you're trying to like trick them, and like genetically your genes, they're basically the way they are, and you're just I guess maximizing your phenotype instead of your genotype, right? So it's basically like a false like construction, or I don't know. So it's, I mean, a bit dishonest. And because when after, let's assume you have got a female, and then you reproduce your children, it is likely that they would have the same issue, unfortunately. um so that's that. But again, the same thing you could say applies to like status maxing, uh to a certain degree. And then another thing is that it's basically you're just showing that you're a slow life history strategist, that like you care for like reproduction and like attracting mates instead of, I guess, investing in the future. So for example, there are studies that show that females, if they know that a male that she looks at is respected in his community and has a lot of friends, she would like her perception of his attractiveness would increase. So you can even status max in this way. So sorry, I got like we're in another direction. Now I forgot
Yeah. Okay.
how I started it even. I'm
No problem.
sorry. It always happens.
Yeah. No problem.
Uh,
That's
I'm also a bit
mine's
nervous.
run wild. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't worry about it. Um. Yeah. So like, I think we've covered quite a lot. Like, unless there was anything else you wanted to say, I think we've been going out for about, I don't know, about an hour and 45 minutes now. So unless you have any
Okay,
closing
yeah.
points,
Yeah, I
I'm
mean,
happy to
I'll
wrap it up here.
just have like yeah, one minute message to incels if they're listening. I did title my video, my last video, message to incels, but I didn't quite like formulate my message. And it's that a lot of incel, like people who are in the incel community, a lot of them, they seem to be above an average, like in attractiveness, and they like you can clearly see those YouTubers, they often open it up. So one person in particular, I remember I've seen him complaining that he's not 6 foot, but he's 5'11". Well, I mean, I'm like less than 5'10", yet you'd never see me complain about my height. So they seem to overemphasize um, the value of those things. Of course they're important, and if you're 6'3" and you're on a dating app, you're going to have like 10 times more success if you're like 5'9" or 5'10", right? So and I think like a lot of this could contribute to mental health problems. So I think ultimately is that people who are in the bottom 20%, I think they are right in becoming black pilled to like a certain degree, but I just don't want to see people, for example, like myself or like yourself, or I would probably assume most of YouTubers who are like I guess Jack Peterson, right, who are incels. So I wouldn't want to see a lot of them blackpilled, because at the end of the day, uh, a lot of males, they like over 90% of males throughout their lifetime, they would form a relationship. I know this
That's not
number
true.
right now,
That's not true. It's at
that's not
28%
true.
now. Um, yeah, of
Oh, no, no,
18
sorry.
to
Yeah,
29
yeah,
year
yeah, yeah.
olds.
Yes, 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 yeah. Yeah, I know what you're referencing right now. Yeah, that is true. Well, I mean, first of all, it does not capture virginity as far as I know, just captures them like I believe having sex in the past couple of years, right?
I believe there was a similar graph for virginity in the last since
Uh-huh.
turning 18. So like I can't
Yeah,
remember off the top of my
okay,
head, but there is that
listen,
data out there.
I know this number is increasing right now. We both agree. But in the 90s, at least the situation was is that over 90% of males after a certain age, I think like tw I don't, sorry, I don't want to like misrepresent, but there
Yeah, of
was a
course.
certain age. So for example, even right now, if we look at 30, after the age of 30, I would probably say that the point still holds that over 90% of males have had a sexual relationship.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, but you're right in the phenomenon of virginity, and I think it would continue to rise, unfortunately. But I just disagree that I don't think it's not as what those like incel online, let's say, commentators make it out to be.
Hmm. Oh, okay. Yeah, fair
Hmm.
enough. Yeah, like sounds good. Um. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the call, or and if you've been
Yeah,
watching,
did you enjoy it?
yeah, and if you've been watching
Mhm.
this, I don't know how long we've been going on for. It must be about an hour and closing in on an hour and 50 minutes now. Um. I hope you've at least learnt something from this, and I haven't really got anything else to say.
Yeah, I'll just say that thank you for having me on, and being open-minded.
Yeah, no problem. Like, that's exactly what I'm like. I'm not here to sit in my corner and sulk to myself. Like, I'd rather. I'm always very open to discussing with other points of view.
Hmm.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Yeah,
So I'll just
thank
end it
you.
right here. Okay, right. See you later.